Today we're going to review everything that we've learned so far in chapter 6. So we're going to title this note page Chapter 6 Review. And remember, chapter 6 has everything to do with integers. So the first skill that we are going to review is writing integers. So when you're given like a word phrase or a word sentence, we want to write it as like a positive or negative number. So the first thing we're going to talk about is writing integers. If you have a highlighter, you may want to highlight that title just so as you look back on these notes, it is nice and clean for you to see where everything's laid out. Okay, so writing integers. So this would be an example of like a loss of 5 yards. Another word phrase might be you earn $25. Let's say for like shoveling your neighbor's snow. Got lots of that right now, don't we? You owe your sister $5. Okay, now we're going to go back in and we're going to write integers that represent these situations. Remember, integers are positive or negative whole numbers. So a loss of 5 yards. A loss tells me that that would be negative, so it would be a negative 5. I want you to go ahead and try these next two on your own, and then you can use the video to check. You earn $25, that would be a positive $25 that you are gaining. Remember, we don't have to put the plus sign in front of it because positive numbers just don't have a sign. You owe your sister $5. When you owe someone money, that's money that you don't have, you're giving it away. So that's going to be a negative 5 as well. All right, and that is how we write integers. Just a quick little review on that. Next thing we talked about was graphing integers on a number line. Okay, so for example, let's graph -4 and its opposite. If you have a highlighter, let's go back up and let's highlight that graphing integers, just so it's nice and easy to find later. All right, so first thing we would do is we'd start out by making our number line. We'd plop 0 down in the middle, count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, count down, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, and I just counted up a bunch, counted down a bunch. I didn't do it specifically in a certain number of times. It really depends on what numbers you're given. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is graph -4. -4 would be right here. And then let's also graph its opposite. So think about to yourself, what is the opposite of -4? Remember, opposites are the same distance from 0. So since -4 is 4 spaces away from 0, +4 would be its opposite. Okay, so I'm going to give you another problem. I want you to try this on your own. Graph 3 and its opposite. So start off by making a number line, and then I'm going to have you pause the video, work ahead, and use the video to check your answer when you are done with your number line to see if you got it correct. Alright, so we pop 0 down in the middle, count up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Again, you could stop at 3 since we're graphing 3 and its opposite. I'm just throwing a bunch of numbers down. Okay, we are graphing 3. So we go to 3, put a nice big dot on it, and its opposite, the opposite of 3 would be -3. Okay, so that's how we graph integers. Again, another quick review on that. Next skill we learned was comparing and ordering integers. And if you have a highlighter, go ahead and highlight that. Just and then as we look back at all our notes later, you'll see that all the highlighted ones are the skills that we've learned so far. Okay. It's real nice and neat. All right, so the first problem, we want to compare -5 using greater than, equal to, or less than to 5. We're also going to do that with -6 and -7. Again, you can pause the video, work ahead if you're feeling confident in the skill, then resume the video to check. Right? So the way we read these statements is the first number and then whatever sign we need to make the statement true and the second number. So -5 is less than 5. With these signs, they always open up towards the bigger number. +5 has more value than -5. Okay? -6 blank -7. So if we use our number line that we have up here, we'd have -6 here, -7 there. Remember, as we move right on the number line, we have more value. So -6, since it is less negative, is going to be greater than -7. You can also think about temperature. I like to think about temperature when I'm comparing. -6 degrees is more than -7 degrees. It's warmer. And as things are warmer, they have more value in temperature. So I like to think about that when I compare negatives as well. The last example we're going to do on this is listing least to greatest. So again, I'm going to have you copy down my list of numbers and then pause the video and try this on your own. We have -1, 0, +1, -2, -5, and 4. And now as you can see, these are not listed least to greatest as is. So we are going to make a new list down here, least number first, greatest number at the end. Again, pause this video, try that on your own, and resume the video to check. First number would be -5 since it's the most negative. The next most negative would be -2. The next most negative would be -1. Now from here we have all whole numbers, so we have 0, 1, and 4. Notice how I'm crossing them off as I go, just to make sure I don't forget one out of my list. All right, let's flip our paper on over. We have one more skill left, and that's that coordinate plane. Okay, so the last skill that we learned about was the coordinate plane. Sometimes we call it a coordinate grid, so I'm going to do coordinate plane / grid, just because I use those words interchangeably, and I know the ideas does as well. So just so you know, that's what we're talking about. Okay. So let's just kind of review what we've learned about in our coordinate plane. So let's just kind of draw a quick little sketch. We've got our y-axis going up and down. Then we've got our x-axis going left and right. Where they meet is called the origin. Remember, the origin is where 0 is on the x-axis and where 0 is on the y-axis. All right, when we plot a point, we always plot the x first and then the y. So we always find the number on this x-axis going left and right. And then the second number tells us how much to go up or down. And it is always that way. It does not ever change. And we also talked about the quadrants. Remember I said if you look at a clock, if you think about this as being a clock, number 1 would be up in this corner, and then it goes backwards to draw that C for that coordinate plane. So it would be 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, now let's do some practice problems. So let's just again sketch a nice little coordinate grid here for us. Okay, we are going to number it, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -2, -3, -4. This would then obviously be 0. Then on our horizontal, this would be 0, so this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Then after 0, we'd have -1, -2, -3, -4. Okay, and I want you to plot the following points. So let's say, I'm going to do this in colors. You don't have to do it in colors because we'll have letters, but just to make it pop on the video. Point A will be 2, -3. Point B will be -4, +4. Point C will be 0, -2. And point D, let's do 1, 3. Okay. So I want you to pause the video, go ahead, plot those points on your little coordinate sketch, and then resume the video to check to make sure you put them all in the right spot. Point A is +2, -3, so remember we always use that x-axis first. So on the x-axis we're going to +2, so we go to +2. The y tells us to go to -3, so +2, -3 would be right here. That is where point A should go. Point B is -4, so on our x-axis we go to -4. The y-axis is telling us to go up to +4. This is where B would be. Next is C, 0, so that tells us not to go left or right on the x-axis. We just stay at 0 and then go down to -2. That's where our point C would be. Last but not least, we have D. We'd have +1, +3. So we go over +1, up +3, and that is where D would go. Right. The last thing we're going to review is those quadrants again. So we are going to say what quadrant each of these points go into. Oops. Okay, so point A, remember this is quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4, so point A would be in quadrant 4. Again, pause the video and try these rest on your own. Point B, if this is 1, B would be in quadrant 2. Point C is tricky. Point C is tricky, so go ahead and try point D, skip it, go ahead to point D, and then we'll come back to point C. So point D is in quadrant 1. Point C isn't in a quadrant. It is on the y-axis, so that's where we say where it is. So it is on the y-axis. So if a point is anywhere on this line, it's not in a quadrant, it's on the y-axis. Same thing if there would be like a point right here. That would not be in a quadrant, that would be considered on the x-axis. Okay. And that is all that we have learned so far in chapter 6. So if you need to rewatch any of these parts to kind of get a better understanding, that's fine. Otherwise, that is all for our lesson today.